Have you ever been laughed at by your own family and realized too late they had absolutely no idea who you were? Because my sister humiliated me at her Christmas engagement party. She'd called me useless. Her fiancé called me a failure. And my entire family laughed like it was entertainment. But 3 weeks later, when the bailiff said, "All rise," then I walked into that courtroom wearing black robes. The man who laughed the loudest couldn't even breathe. And that's when I realized something terrifying was about to become his worst Christmas memory. Courtroom B smells like old paper and cheap coffee. It's early is a kind of morning where nobody wants to be there. Defendants shifting in their seats. Lawyers have phones buzzing quietly before being silenced. I sit behind the bench, hands folded, neutral face, professional posture. I haven't looked at him yet. The bailiff steps forward. All rise. Chairs scrape. The room stands. And then I lift my eyes. That's when I see him, Sarah's fiancé, standing at the defense table. One hand gripping the edge like it's the only thing keeping him upright. At first he didn't recognize me. Why would he? Last time he saw me, I was standing by a dessert table, being laughed at, holding a cheap Christmas gift, while he made jokes about my life. But then our eyes lock, and everything changes. It hits him in stages. First, confusion. His brow tightens, like his brain is replaying a memory it doesn't want to accept. Then, recognition. His mouth opens, slightly. No sound comes out. Color drains from his face so fast it's almost scary. He leans toward his lawyer, whispers something urgently. The lawyer glances at me, then back at him, then straightens up, suddenly very serious. And that's when his breathing changes. Shallow, because now he knows. The woman he mocked at Christmas, the useless sister, the one with the fake career, is sitting above him, in silence, with authority. I don't smile, I don't react, I don't give him anything, because power doesn't announce itself. It waits. I flip open the file in front of me, even though I've already read it twice. His name is right there, black ink, official, permanent. Funny how a name looks different when it's printed on a criminal docket. I clear my throat. The sound alone makes him flinch. I say, calmly, evenly, "You are charged with..." He interrupts me, blurts it out. Wait. His lawyer grabs his sleeve, whispering harshly, but it's too late. He looks straight at me, voice shaking. "You're Sarah's sister." The room shifts. People sense something just happened, even if they don't know what. I met his eyes for the first time fully, and I say, slow and cold, in this courtroom, "You will address me as Your Honor." Silence crashes down like snow. You could hear a pen drop. He swallows hard, nods quickly. Yes, Your Honor." And for the first time since I sat down, I let myself breathe, because 3 weeks ago, he laughed while my sister called me a nobody. Tonight, he'll go home knowing something far worse, that the person he underestimated the most now exists forever in his memory. At the moment, his life cracked open. But here's what makes this story even darker. This wasn't the first time he'd been unfaithful. And Sarah, she had no idea yet. She was still planning the wedding, still posting Christmas photos, still calling him the love of her life. And in the next part, I'll tell you exactly how my sister turned me into the family joke and why staying silent that night was the most dangerous move of all. Sarah was always Christmas. That's what my mother used to say. Sarah lights up the room. She'd laugh, adjusting the ornaments. Sarah brings the fun. And I was background noise. From the time we were kids, the roles were locked in. Sarah was louder, prettier, faster, the one teachers loved, the one relatives asked about. First, I was the quiet one who read too much, the one who stayed inside when everyone else was outside taking photos. At family gatherings, people didn't ask what I was doing. They asked how long I'd been still in school. Every Christmas made it clearer. Sarah showed up with stories, trips, friends, boyfriends. I showed up with books, internships nobody understood, a future nobody could see yet. And my family, they made sure I felt it. My mom liked to say, "We just worry about you." My dad liked to say, "Law is a tough field. Most people don't make it." Sarah didn't bother pretending. She'd smile sweetly and say things like, "So, still studying," or "It must be nice not having real responsibilities." She never asked what I was working toward. She never cared. And I stopped explaining. Because here's the thing about grinding. Quietly, you learn very early that announcing your plans just gives people something to laugh at. So, I kept my head down. Law school, clerkships, exams that broke, people. Christmas after Christmas, I showed up tired, thinner, quieter. And every year, Sarah looked more confident, more untouchable. By the time she met him, her fiancé, it felt inevitable. He fit her perfectly, confident to the point of arrogance. The kind of man who talked over people and called it charm. At dinner, he'd lean back in his chair, beer in hand, and explain how the world worked. He ran a business, he made moves. He loved saying that. And the first thing he noticed about me, nothing. I was invisible to him, until Sarah decided to use me as a punchline. It happened slowly at first, little comments at dinners, jokes disguised as concern. Don't pressure her, Sarah would say to relatives. Some people just aren't built for high-stress careers. Everyone laughed. I smiled tightly. What none of them knew, what I made sure they didn't know, was that I'd already passed the bar, that I was clerking in a small jurisdiction, that my name was quietly moving up lists that mattered. Because I'd learned something early. In my family, success only counted if it was loud, and mine wasn't ready to be. Then came the engagement. Christmas. Engagement. Of course it was Christmas. Sarah announced it like a movie trailer. Photos, champagne, matching sweaters, a ring flashed under the lights like it was begging for attention. The family lost their minds. Finally, a wedding, a real milestone, something worth celebrating. And me, I became a contrast. At every planning dinner, every holiday gathering, leading up to Christmas Eve, I felt it. The unspoken comparison. Sarah's moving forward. I'm still there. Her fiancé barely hid his opinion. He'd look at me with that half smile, the one people use when they think they're being generous. So what do you actually do? He asked once. I answered calmly, I'm in the legal field. He laughed. Everyone's in the legal field. Sarah laughed with him. That should have been my warning, because by the time Christmas Eve arrived, the night of the engagement party, they were already comfortable, tearing me apart in public. And I let them, not because I was weak, but because I knew something they didn't. And in the next part, I'll tell you exactly how that Christmas party turned cruel, how the joke crossed a line, and why the room went silent right after Sarah raised her glass. Christmas Eve felt louder than usual that year. Too many voices, too much music, too many people trying to prove how happy they were. Zara rented out the back room of this upscale restaurant downtown. Fake snow sprayed the windows from outside. Christmas lights wrapped around every railing, and a giant banner hung behind the bar. She said yes. Her words. Her moment. Her season. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. Long enough to avoid helping, short enough to avoid being accused of not caring. The room was already buzzing when I walked in. Sarah spotted me immediately. She always did. Her eyes flicked to my coat, then my shoes, then my hands. No ring. She smiled anyway, that smile she used when she was about to enjoy herself. Her fiancé stood beside her, arm wrapped around her waist like a trophy he'd already won. He scanned the room, greeting people loudly, laughing, to her, playing the role of the perfect future husband. When his eyes landed on me, he gave a short nod. Nothing more. I was a staff. I slipped toward the back, near the dessert table, picked up a drink, told myself I'd leave early. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was staying silent when the jokes started. At first, they were subtle. An aunt asked Sarah how wedding planning was going. Sarah sighed dramatically. Stressful, but at least some of us are moving forward in life. A cousin laughed. Someone glanced at me. I pretended not to notice. Then someone asked about careers. Sarah didn't miss a beat. Well, you know what I do, she said proudly. And he runs his own business. She turned, scanning the room until her eyes landed on me again. And my sister, she paused, smiling, is still figuring things out. The room chuckled politely. I took a sip of my drink. I could have corrected her. I could have shut it down, but correcting Sarah never stopped her. It just made her louder. So I stayed quiet. The music got louder. The drinks kept flowing. And eventually, someone handed Sarah a microphone. That's when things shifted. She tapped the glass. The room slowly quieted. Her fiancé kissed her cheek. Whispers of speech moved through the crowd. Sarah straightened her shoulders. "Thank you all so much for coming tonight," she said. "This Christmas is extra special for us." Double quotes applause. She waited for it to die down. "I just want to say how grateful I am for my family, for always supporting me." She paused, then tilted her head, "and for always being honest." My stomach tightened. "Because let's be real," she continued, laughing lightly, "not everyone figures life out at the same pace." A few laughs. Her eyes found me again. She didn't look away this time. "My sister and I grew up so differently," she said. "I was always the motivated one." More laughter. "And she was always," she shrugged, "more comfortable letting life happen to her." The room reacted louder now. I felt heat creep up my neck. Sarah laughed with them. "Maybe one day," she added, "she'll find her path." Then she smiled sweetly. "Or maybe some people are just meant to watch." That's when the laughter exploded. Not polite chuckles, not awkward laughs, real laughter. And then her fiancé stepped forward. He took the microphone from her like this was planned. "I just want to say," he said, grinning, "that we're happy everyone could make it." He looked around the room, then straight at me. "And hey," he added, "thanks for the gift." He lifted the small box I'd given them earlier. "Real thoughtful," he said, "budget-friendly too." Someone snorted. He shook the box lightly. "It must be nice not having real bills, right?" The room lost it. I felt my face burn, but I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't react, because in that moment, something inside me hardened, not broke, hardened. I realized something important. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as entertainment, contrast dots, as proof that Sarah was winning, and I let them believe it. I smiled. I raised my glass slightly, even nodded bonds. That confused him. Sarah frowned for half a second. Her fiancé hesitated, but the moment passed. They kept laughing, and I stayed. I stayed through the rest of the party, through the toasts, through the photos. I hugged Sarah goodbye. She whispered, no hard feelings, like she'd done me a favor, wished them a Merry Christmas, and I left. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had memorized every word, every laugh, every face that turned toward me, because humiliation has a way of sharpening memory. And as I drove home that night, Christmas lights blurring past my windshield, one thought repeated in my head, over and over. They think this is the end of my story. They think this is all I am. And 3 weeks later, when his name landed on my docket, I realized just how wrong they were, because the joke they made at Christmas was about to come back to them in the most public way possible. And in the next part, I'll tell you what he did, who he did it with, and why Sarah was the last person to find out. The file showed up on a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic about it at first. Just another folder stacked neatly among dozens of others waiting to be reviewed. I almost skipped over it, almost. But then I saw the name dot, his name dot, same spelling, same middle initial. For a second, I thought it had to be a coincidence. It wasn't. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling longer than I should have, because the charges underneath his name weren't minor, not the kind you laugh off at a family dinner. Reckless endangerment, public indecency. My stomach tightened. I flipped the page. Police report, body cam notes, timestamp, 1:42 a.m. location, a hotel parking lot, 2 towns over. Passenger listed, not Sarah, not even close. Some woman he'd met online, name unfamiliar, age younger than I expected. And the notes, they told a story that made my hands go cold. He'd been drinking for hours. Left the bar he wasn't supposed to be at. Got pulled over because his headlights were off. The officer noted the woman scrambling to pull her dress down. The smell of alcohol. His slurred speech. And then this line. The subject stated he was celebrating upcoming marriage. I closed the file, sat there in silence, because suddenly, Christmas Eve replayed in my head like a highlight reel. The jokes, the laughter, the way he held Sarah like she was a prize, all while this was already happening, all while he was already lying. What made it worse? The dates. This wasn't a one-time mistake. The messages printed in the discovery showed weeks of conversations, photos exchanged, plans made. This wasn't a slip. This was a habit. And Sarah had no idea. I checked the docket schedule. Again, my heart thudded. Arraignments were rotating that week. And his name, was slotted for the morning calendar. My calendar. I knew what the rules were. I knew what ethics required, but I also knew this he didn't know. Not yet. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was conflicted, but because I kept picturing his face when he realized, the way his voice would change, the way his confidence would collapse, the way power shifts when someone finally understands they misjudged you completely. The morning of court arrived faster than I expected. I dressed carefully, neutral colors, hair pulled back, nothing that made me look like someone's sister. I wasn't family here. I was on the bench. When I arrived, the hallway was already full. People pacing, lawyers checking phones, defendants whispering excuses. I spotted him immediately. He stood out, not because he looked scared, because he didn't. He leaned casually against the wall, laughing quietly with his lawyer like this was a nuisance, not a problem. That arrogance, the same one he wore at Christmas, the same one that told him consequences were for other people. I passed him without stopping, without looking, and I felt his eyes follow me. Curious, confused, both still unaware. Inside the courtroom, I sat down and organized my papers slowly. I could hear his voice behind me now, still confident, still joking. Then the bailiff spoke. All rise, and the room changed. That's when I saw it happen from start to finish. Confusion, recognition, fear. The same man who mocked my life in front of my family. I couldn't see my eyes when he interrupted me, when he said my name out loud. I saw Sarah in his face for the first time. Not love. Panic. Because he knew exactly what this meant. This wasn't just a judge. This was proof. Proof that he'd lied to the wrong people, mocked the wrong person, built his confidence on the wrong assumption. I continued professionally, by the book, charges read, rights explained, and then, like I was required to, I did it. I recused myself. Clear, immediate, no hesitation, but not before the damage was permanent, because the courtroom had witnessed it. His lawyer had witnessed it, and most importantly, the case was reassigned, bail was set higher than he expected, higher than he could casually cover. As deputies led him away, he looked back at me one last time, not angry, not offended, regretful, because now he understood something that hit harder than any sentence. He wasn't untouchable, and he never had been. What he didn't know yet, what he couldn't possibly know, was that Sarah would find out the truth not from him, but from a public court record, and a phone call she never expected to receive. And when that happened, everything would fall apart. Sarah found out on Thursday. Not from him, not from me, from a coworker, someone who recognized his name, scrolled through public records, and sent her a screenshot with a single message underneath. Isn't this your fiancé? She called me less than 10 minutes later. I could hear it in her breathing before she even spoke. Sharp, uneven, like she'd been running. Tell me this isn't real, she said. No greeting, no anger yet, just fear. I didn't answer right away, not because I was being cruel, but because sometimes silence lets reality land harder than words ever could. Say something, she snapped. So I did. It's real, I said calmly. The line went quiet. Then her voice dropped, low and shaky. You knew, she said. It wasn't a question. I found out when the file came across my desk. I replied. Another pause. And you didn't tell me. That one stung more than I expected. I couldn't, I said honestly. It was an active case, and I didn't know how deep it went yet. She laughed suddenly. Not a happy laugh. The kind that cracks in the middle. How deep? She repeated. What does that even mean? So I told her about the messages, the dates, how long it had been going on. I didn't soften it, because lies were already what destroyed her. I wasn't going to add another layer. By the time I finished, she was crying, full sobs now. The kind you hear when someone realizes the life they planned doesn't exist anymore. I look like an idiot, she whispered. That was the first time I'd ever heard her sound small, not angry, not superior. Just Brooklyn let me brag about him, she said. You stood there while I made fun of you. I said nothing. I defended him, she continued. To everyone, I could hear memories catching up to her in real time. The jokes, the laughter, the way he joined in. And suddenly I knew exactly what she was thinking. She hadn't just humiliated me, she'd humiliated herself. The wedding was canceled that night. No announcement, no explanation, just silence. Invitations pulled, vendors notified, and for the first time since we were kids, Sarah disappeared. The family didn't know what to do with that. Phones rang non-stop. My mother cried. My father paced. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted someone to blame. And somehow, that someone became me. You could have warned her, my mom said. You didn't have to be involved. My aunt added. I listened quietly. Same way I had at Christmas. Because what not everyone realized yet was that the power dynamic had already shifted. They weren't talking to me anymore. They were talking to me carefully. And a few days later, they finally understood why it happened at Sunday dinner. No decorations this time. No laughter. Just tension. My dad cleared his throat. So, when exactly did you become a judge? The table froze. Folks paused midair. I set my napkin down slowly. I was appointed last year. I said. My mom's eyes widened. Appointed, she repeated. Yes. Sarah stared at me. You never said anything. She whispered. I tried. I replied. No one listened. That landed harder than anything else I could have said. Suddenly, the jokes from Christmas didn't feel funny anymore. Suddenly, the laughter had an echo. The room felt smaller. Respect showed up quietly that night. Not loud, not proud. Uneasy. My aunt apologized. My cousin avoided eye contact. And Sarah, she couldn't look at me at all. Not out of anger, out of shame. Weeks passed. Her ex tried calling me once, left a voicemail, apologizing, not for cheating, not for lying, but for not knowing who I was. That message told me everything. I did it because some lessons don't need responses. Christmas came and went again. The next year, different choir dat, and Sarah never made another joke about my life. But here's the part people always ask me about, the part they think matters most. Did I enjoy it? The answer no. What I enjoyed was finally being seen, not as a family joke, not as the quiet sister, but as someone who mattered, someone whose silence had always been strength. And if there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's simple. Never confuse someone's quiet grind for weakness, because one day they might be the reason your world comes crashing down. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been laughed at, and remember this story. And tell me, would you have stayed silent at Christmas or spoken up sooner? Your answer says more than you think. A month after everything fell apart, I thought the story was finally done. The court moved on. The case faded from my docket. The family stopped whispering. Life settled into something quiet again. That's when he showed up, not at court, not at my office, at my door. It was early evening. It's dark already, cold in that way only January knows how to be. I opened the door and there he was. Thinner, unshaven, no confidence left to hide behind. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I shouldn't be here, he said finally. No, I replied. You shouldn't. He nodded like he agreed. I just needed to say something, he continued, face to face. I didn't invite him in. He cleared his throat. I didn't know, he said, about you, about what you were. There it was again. Now I'm sorry. I cheated. Now I hurt Sada I misjudged you. I didn't ask, I said calmly. He flinched. I messed up, he added quickly. I was under a lot of pressure. I waited. He kept talking. About stress, about expectations, about how Sarah was hard to please. And that's when I felt it. Not anger. Disappointment. Because even now, he still didn't get it. You humiliated me, I said quietly. You cheated on my sister. And you think Prasha explains that? He opened his mouth. I raised my hand. You came here to feel better, I said. Not to make things right. That one landed. His shoulders sagged. I lost everything, he said. I looked at him. No, I replied. You gave it away. Silence stretched between us. Then he asked the one question I knew was coming. Did you enjoy it? I met his eyes. No, I said. But I learned from it. He waited. I learned that people like you only respect what scares them. That was the moment he finally looked ashamed. Not embarrassed. Ashamed. He nodded once. Then he turned and walked away, closed the door and locked it. That should have been the end. but consequences. Sarah didn't bounce back quickly. She moved out of her apartment, stopped posting online, quit her job a few months later. We didn't talk for a long time. Then one night, close to Christmas again, she texted me, "Can we talk?" We met at a coffee shop near where we grew up, same place we used to stop after school. She looked different, quieter, less certain. I replayed that night all the time, she admitted. The jokes, laughing. She stared at her cup. "I didn't think it mattered." I said nothing. "I didn't think you cared," she added. "I cared," I replied. "I just stopped asking you to." Her eyes filled. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for all of it. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it was real, and that mattered more." Christmas that year was smaller. No parties, no speeches, just dinner. And for the first time, nobody made jokes at my expense. Not because they were afraid, because they finally understood. Power doesn't need to announce itself, it just exists. And sometimes, the most satisfying revenge isn't humiliation. It's watching the people who laughed at you learn to speak carefully around your name. So I'll leave you with this. If you're grinding quietly, if people underestimate you, let them. Because silence isn't weakness, it's patience. And patience changes everything. If you were in my place, would you have spoken up at Christmas? Or would you have waited and let the truth speak for you? Tell me in the comments. A few weeks after that quiet Christmas, something unexpected happened. Sarah showed up at my place. No warning, no text, just a knock. When I opened the door, she was standing there holding a small box, wrapped sloppily in red paper like she'd done it in the car. "I know it's late," she said. "And I know I don't really have the right to just show up." She didn't wait for permission. She stepped inside. The box stayed clutched to her chest the whole time. Like Amma, we sat at the kitchen table in silence. Finally, she slid it toward me. "I never opened your gift," she said. My stomach tightened. She laughed softly, embarrassed. "I was too busy being me." I didn't move. "You don't have to." I told her, "I want to," she replied. She pushed it closer, so I opened it. Inside was the same leather-bound planner I'd given her fiancé, the one he mocked, the one he shook in front of everyone, like it was a joke. Only now, there was something tucked inside, a folded note. Sarah watched my face as I opened it. It was her handwriting. "You weren't weak. I just didn't know how strong you were. I'm sorry I learned too late." I swallowed. That Apollo hit harder than anything else she'd said so far, because it wasn't loud. It wasn't defensive. It was honest. "I built my whole identity on being better than you," she said quietly. "And when that fell apart, I didn't know who I was." She finally looked up. "You never tried to compete," she added. "That's what scares me now." We sat with that for a while. Then she said something I didn't expect. "He called me after he came to your place." My body stiffened. "He told me you ruined his life." I raised an eyebrow. Sarah shook her head, slowly, and that's when I realized something. She leaned back in her chair. "He still thinks this is about you." I smiled faintly. "People like him always do." She nodded. "He begged me to testify for him," she continued. "Said it would fix things." That was new. "And I asked." I said no. She exhaled. "For the first time." I said no. That moment mattered more than she realized, because it wasn't about him anymore. It was about her finally choosing herself. Weeks later, the case was resolved quietly. No dramatic headlines, no speeches. Just consequences, probation, mandatory programs, a record that followed him wherever he went. He tried to start over, moved cities, changed numbers, but reputations have a way of traveling faster than people. And every now and then I'd hear things: a job offer pulled, a partnership that fell through. Nothing I caused, just gravity. Family gatherings changed after that, not suddenly, gradually. People asked for my opinion more, listened when I spoke. Sarah stopped interrupting me. My mother stopped explaining it to me. Respect didn't arrive with an apology. It arrived with awareness. And that's the part people don't talk about enough. Sometimes the biggest revenge isn't watching someone fall. It's watching them realize they were standing on you the whole time. The last time I saw him was almost a year later. I didn't recognize him at first. He was across the street outside a courthouse cafe, waiting for someone else. Our eyes met briefly. He looked away, no anger, no resentment, just avoidance. And that told me everything. Because when someone can't even look at you anymore, it means they finally understand what they lost. Sarah and I aren't close now, but we're honest. And that's better. She's quieter. Be more careful. She listens. And every Christmas since, something's been different. No speeches, no jokes, just dinner, just peace. So, if you're listening to this and thinking about every time someone laughed at you, every time you were underestimated, every time you were told you weren't enough, remember this, that loudest people don't win. The patient ones do. And if you ever get the chance to let karma speak for you, let it, because silence, when paired with truth, is devastating. Tell me in the comments, would you have stayed quiet like I did? Or would you have spoken up and risked being dismissed again? And if you want another story where cheating, arrogance, and karma collide in the worst possible way, you already know what to do. This isn't the last time someone underestimated the wrong person. The thing nobody tells you about moments like this is that the aftermath lasts longer than the climax. People assume once the cheater is exposed, once the family dynamic flips, once the apology happens, that everything resets. It doesn't, it settles. And settling is where the real consequences live. Spring came, slowly, that year. Sarah started therapy. She didn't announce it, she didn't post about healing, she just went, once. She told me something that stuck. I always thought confidence meant never doubting yourself, she said. Now I think it means being willing to sit with doubt. Thou is growth, real growth. Thou a pair exchange too, just not all at once. My mother stopped saying things like, you're just different, and started saying, I'm proud of you. My father began asking questions, actual questions, not about my job title, about my day. It was subtle, but it mattered. Then, one afternoon, months later, I got a letter, handwritten, no return address. I knew who it was from before I opened it. He didn't apologize. Again, he didn't ask for anything. He just wrote one sentence. I finally understand why you never defended yourself. That was it. No signature, no explanation. I folded it once and threw it away, because by then I didn't need validation from someone who learned too late. The irony. If he'd kept his mouth shut at Christmas, if he'd just been kind, he probably never would have known who I was. He would have gone on thinking he was smarter, stronger, untouchable. And that realization, that hurts more than punishment. Summer has passed. Sarah rebuilt her life quietly. Different friends, different priorities. She stopped chasing rooms that required her to be cruel, to feel important, and I watched her become someone else, someone better. Then next Christmas came faster than expected. No engagement party this time, no microphones, just the tree food candles. At one point, my aunt started telling a story and cocked herself before making a joke at my expense. She glanced at me, embarrassed. I smiled, not smug, not victorious, just calm, because that's what power looks like when it's earned. After dinner, Sarah pulled me aside. She said, people at work still talk about you. I raised an eyebrow. Not like before, she added quickly. Not in a bad way. I waited. They say things like, don't underestimate her. I nodded. That phrase followed me everywhere after that. In rooms where people thought they were in control, in conversations where silence spoke louder than words, and I realized something important. This wasn't just about a cheating fiancé, or a cruel sister, or a courtroom moment. It was about identity, about who people think you are, versus who you actually are, and how dangerous that gap can be. If you take anything from this story, take this. You don't owe anyone your full story. You don't owe anyone proof. You don't owe anyone an explanation for grinding quietly. Let them laugh, let them assume. Because one day, without warning, the room will change. And when it does, you won't need to say a word. If you stayed with me until the end, thank you. And tell me, have you ever been underestimated by the people closest to you? And when the moment finally came, did you speak up or let silence handle it for you? Your answer might help someone else realize they're not behind, they're just early. A few weeks after that quiet Christmas, something unexpected happened. The ex showed up again, at court. Not at my office, but at a public holiday event my family attended. He thought he could slip in unnoticed. He didn't realize who else would be there. The town square was crowded, twinkling lights reflected off the icy sidewalks. Children were running, couples holding hands, carolers singing. It all looked peaceful. Almost too peaceful. He moved through the crowd, scanning faces, confident at first, smiling faintly, acting like he belonged. Then he saw me. I was speaking quietly to my mother, and when I turned, our eyes met. For a moment, he froze, not just startled frozen. His jaw tightened, his hands trembled slightly, and then, slowly, he realized. Number, audience, no microphone, no courtroom. He was still outmatched. A woman walking by bumped into him lightly, and he stumbled. Someone whispered, "Watch out." And in that small, public moment, it became clear he wasn't untouchable anymore. I didn't approach him. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. But everyone around him, my family included, noticed the hesitation in his step. The subtle panic. Later, Sarah caught up with me. She didn't need to ask what had happened. She had seen the same thing I had. "This is satisfying," she admitted quietly. Her voice wasn't mean, it was just honest. "And I don't even have to do anything." I nodded. Some lessons are best delivered without words. And that's when it hit me. The best revenge isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It isn't even noticed immediately. It's slow. It's inevitable. It's the kind of satisfaction that grows in silence until one day, the people who mocked you can't help but notice. By the time the holidays ended, DX had retreated completely from our lives. He sent no messages. He posted no photos. He tried to rebuild elsewhere, but the story had already followed him. In the town, in whispers, in the little ripple of recognition when someone remembered that one. Christmas and the courtroom. After Sarah and I didn't celebrate extravagantly the next year. No parties, no speeches, just a quiet Christmas dinner with our parents. She leaned over once, smiling faintly. "I never realized how strong you were," she said. I shrugged. "It's not about strength," I said. "It's about patience." And that, finally, was enough. Because sometimes the most satisfying karma isn't watching someone fall. It's watching them slowly realize they underestimated you on theirs. Nothing they can do about it. So if you're listening to this story, remember, the quiet ones. The ones who grind, who plan, who wait. They aren't weak. They're just patient. And patience can be devastating. Now tell me in the comments, would you have stayed silent at Christmas? Or would you have exposed them immediately? And if you want more stories of cheating, betrayal, and karma, you already know the next story is even bigger, because people like this always come back around.